The order is already moving. It exists before it is read, before it is acknowledged, before it is understood. It moves in identical language, copied precisely, carried forward without alteration. Each time it is received, it is treated as complete. Each time it is passed along, it becomes less personal and more final. Paper is signed, signals are transmitted, confirmations return in the expected format. There is no urgency in the motion, only certainty. The order does not hurry. It does not need to. It was written to be followed, not examined. Its phrasing leaves no space. Each sentence closes behind itself. Conditions are stated without explanation. Timing is fixed. Sequence is implied. There are no alternatives embedded in the text. No margins wide enough for doubt. Those who receive it recognize the structure immediately. It is familiar. It resembles countless other directives that arrived before it and departed the same way. The language is neutral. The tone is administrative. Nothing in it suggests risk. Nothing in it acknowledges possibility. The order is not debated. Debate is not part of its design. It is logged. It is stamped. It is forwarded. Each step confirms the previous one. The process repeats with mechanical consistency. No voice is raised. No pause is required. The system was built to prevent hesitation, and it performs as intended. Across the network that carries it, the order becomes less an instruction and more a condition. It shapes schedules. It fixes movements. It aligns actions that have not yet occurred. The people involved do not need to imagine the whole. They only need to recognize their portion and complete it. Compliance does not feel like a choice. It feels like alignment. Somewhere, equipment is prepared according to specifications. Somewhere else, timetables are adjusted to accommodate the directive's arrival. Elsewhere still, forms are completed that confirm readiness. Each action is correct. Each response is appropriate. Each confirmation reinforces the same conclusion. The order is sound. No names are attached to it now. No faces. Authority has already done its work and withdrawn. What remains is structure. What remains is momentum. The order moves downward, outward, and forward, passing through hands that do not alter it and minds that do not interrupt it. The repetition itself becomes proof. If it has moved this far unchanged, it must be right. Silence accompanies it, not because there is fear, but because silence is efficient. The absence of objection is not noted. It is expected. By the time the final acknowledgement is recorded, the order has completed its most important function. It has removed uncertainty. It has converted possibility into instruction. Everything that follows will be execution. The outcome is already contained within the language that carried it. The environment that receives the order is designed for reception. Nothing in it is improvised. Every space has a function already assigned, every role defined long before the current moment. The structure does not respond to circumstance. It anticipates them by eliminating variation. Walls are bare. Desks are arranged to face forward. The flow of information follows fixed paths, like channels cut into stone. Within this structure, authority is not asserted. It is assumed. Each level exists to reduce complexity. Decisions are distilled as they move downward, stripped of context and intention until only action remains. The system does not ask what an order means. It asks where it belongs. Once placed, it moves automatically. The people inside the structure are trained for accuracy, not interpretation. Their responsibilities are narrow by design. They are taught where their responsibility ends, as carefully as where it begins. The boundary is clear. Beyond it, nothing is required of them. The order arrives at the first level below its origin and is accepted without ceremony. It is read once, then translated into a smaller set of instructions that mirror its shape. This is not modification. It is compliance through subdivision. Each fragment is exact. Each carries the authority of the whole. From there, the process repeats. At each step, the order is reduced in scope but increased in certainty. Ambiguity disappears as responsibility narrows. No one holds enough of it to see the full outline, and no one is meant to. The system relies on this division. It prevents contradiction. It ensures consistency. Forms are filled out. Logs are updated. Times are synchronized. The act of acknowledgement is more important than the act of understanding. Once acknowledged, the order becomes part of the environment, like a schedule or a boundary line. Questions do not arise because the structure has no mechanism for them at this stage. The time for inquiry existed earlier, somewhere above. The presence of the order itself signals that those considerations have already occurred. To question now would imply a failure higher up, and the system does not accommodate that implication. The chain of command is visible in its absence. Authority does not need to be displayed. It is embedded in procedure. The lower levels do not look upward for reassurance. They look inward, toward checklists and protocols that confirm correctness. Movement within the structure is smooth. Information flows in one direction. Confirmations flow back. The rhythm is steady. It has been practiced countless times in contexts that ended without consequence. The familiarity dulls awareness without diminishing precision. The order continues downward. At each level, the same transformation occurs. Broad instruction becomes specific task. Specific task becomes assigned action. Assigned action becomes scheduled movement. Nothing is lost because nothing is examined. The environment reinforces this process. Noise is controlled. Communication is brief and standardized. Language is functional, stripped of emphasis. Emotional inflection would only introduce error. Those carrying out the relay are not indifferent. Indifference is unnecessary. Their confidence comes from repetition. They have seen orders like this before. Most ended quietly. Some required adjustment, but those adjustments came from above, never from within. The structure remembers those outcomes selectively. It remembers success as confirmation. It forgets deviation as anomaly. As the order reaches lower levels, it begins to dictate physical arrangements. Resources are allocated precisely according to instruction. Quantities are calculated. Positions are marked. Timing is synchronized across units that do not see one another and do not need to. No one involved feels exposed. The system absorbs individual responsibility by distributing it so completely that it disappears. Each person can point to procedure. Each action is justified by reference to the step before it. The structure rewards this behavior. Accuracy is noted. Compliance is recorded. Deviations, when they occur, are corrected quietly and without explanation. The order is now deeply embedded. At this stage, reversing it would require interruption at multiple levels simultaneously. Such interruption is not part of the design. The structure assumes continuity. It assumes that once an order has passed a certain point, it is no longer an idea but a condition. The people within the system do not perceive danger. Danger is an external concept. Inside the structure there is only correctness or error, and error is defined narrowly as failure to comply. The order continues its descent, unchanged, unquestioned, intact. By the time it reaches the point where action will begin, it has been validated so many times that it no longer feels provisional. It feels inevitable. The structure has done what it was built to do. It has ensured that nothing stands between the order and its execution. Execution begins on schedule, not abruptly, not with emphasis, but as a continuation of everything that came before. There is no clear moment when the order becomes action. The transition is seamless. Preparation dissolves into movement. The distinction is administrative, not physical. Signals are exchanged in predetermined sequences. Each confirmation arrives exactly where it is expected. Timing aligns across separate elements that do not communicate directly. The coordination is precise because it has been simplified. Each part knows only its own starting point and its own endpoint. No one speaks beyond what is required. Communication is minimal and exact. Words are chosen from a fixed vocabulary that allows no interpretation. Silence fills the gaps between transmissions, not as tension, but as efficiency. Actions unfold according to the schedule embedded in the order. Movements occur at assigned intervals. Resources are deployed in the quantities specified. Paths are followed because they were designated. Nothing deviates because nothing is allowed to. The environment responds predictably. Mechanisms engage. Systems activate. The order expresses itself through motion that appears disciplined, controlled. From within, it feels orderly. From within, it feels correct. There is no hesitation because hesitation has nowhere to exist. Each step triggers the next automatically. The completion of one task is the authorization for the next. The sequence is self-sustaining. Individuals focus on their immediate responsibilities. Hands perform rehearsed motions. Eyes track expected indicators. Attention is narrowed to prevent distraction. Broader awareness is unnecessary and therefore absent. The order does not require belief. It requires execution. Timing remains exact. Coordination holds. The system performs as designed. The absence of friction is interpreted as success. The absence of objection is interpreted as confirmation. As execution continues, the order's authority becomes less visible, but more absolute. It no longer needs to be referenced. It is present in the alignment of actions, in the synchronization of movement, in the shared certainty that everything is proceeding as intended. No one steps outside their role. Doing so would introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty is treated as error. The system discourages improvisation by making it irrelevant. There is no reward for initiative within a completed plan. The order advances through physical space now, not just through channels and procedures. It occupies terrain, time, and attention. It reshapes the environment to fit its assumptions. There are moments where observation could occur. Small discrepancies appear at the edges of awareness. Minor variations, signals that do not align perfectly with expectation. They are noted briefly, then dismissed. The order accounts for normal variation. It is understood to be resilient. Reports move upward, condensed and standardized. They confirm progress. They confirm compliance. They confirm that execution matches instruction. The format does not allow for uncertainty. Data fits into predefined categories. Anything outside them is excluded. The system interprets this as clarity. As the order continues to express itself, it becomes increasingly difficult to distinguish intention from momentum. The actions no longer feel directed. They feel inevitable. Stopping would require a conscious break in sequence, and no such break is authorized. The structure does not pause to evaluate outcomes in real time. Evaluation is scheduled for later. For now, the only requirement is continuation. Execution proceeds because it must. By the time the final phase of the order is underway, the system is fully committed. Resources have been expended. Positions have been taken. Timelines have converged. There is no mechanism left for reconsideration. The order is no longer being followed. It is being completed. The first signs do not arrive as alarms. They appear as inconsistency, small, contained, easily categorized as irregular, but acceptable. The system is accustomed to variance. It expects deviation at the margins. It is designed to absorb it without alteration. Data continues to arrive in approved formats. Progress reports remain compliant. Language remains neutral. Nothing in the structure's official channels indicates disruption. The order remains valid. Yet the environment begins to respond in ways not anticipated by the instruction. Timelines stretch slightly. Spatial relationships shift. Movements that were meant to align begin to pass one another without convergence. These observations are recorded, not interpreted. The system registers them as conditions, not warnings. Each report is filed within its designated category and forwarded along the same pathways as before. The act of reporting is complete. The act of adaptation is not authorized. Execution continues. The order does not include conditional clauses. It does not allow for revision once initiated. Its authority derives from its completeness, and completeness leaves no room for interruption. As discrepancies accumulate, they do not form a clear signal. They remain isolated, fragmented across different levels of the structure. No single position is designed to assemble them into a coherent picture. The system relies on separation to function efficiently. That separation now prevents recognition. Attempts to clarify are procedural, not conceptual. Additional confirmations are requested. Status checks are repeated. The same questions are asked in the same formats, yielding the same limited answers. The order remains unchanged. There are moments when the pace of execution no longer matches expectation. Actions occur, but their effects do not propagate as intended. Synchronization begins to degrade, not dramatically, but subtly. The system compensates by reinforcing adherence to schedule. Adjustments that could mitigate the discrepancy exist, but they fall outside assigned authority. Implementing them would require deviation is indistinguishable from error within the structure. Silence persists, not as denial, but as discipline. The order continues to assert itself through momentum. Its presence is felt in the refusal of the system to pause. Each completed step justifies the next, even as the original assumptions embedded in the order begin to diverge from reality. Reports now contain language that approaches uncertainty, but never reaches it. Phrases are chosen carefully. Observations are described without implication. The structure rewards this restraint. Emotional interpretation is excluded by design. Some actions must be repeated to compensate for earlier misalignment. Resources are redirected according to secondary procedures that support the original directive. These procedures are executed flawlessly. They do not resolve the underlying issue. The order's authority prevents contradiction, even as its effectiveness erodes. At no point does the system declare failure. There is no provision for that declaration at this stage. The order remains active, and as long as it remains active, compliance is mandatory. The environment grows less predictable. Outcomes no longer match projections. Yet projections continue to guide action because they are embedded in the order's framework. The structure does not perceive danger. It perceives delay, inefficiency, variance. These are manageable concepts. They do not require abandonment of the directive. The gap between instruction and consequence widens. Still, the order moves forward. By the time the flaw becomes undeniable in physical terms, the system has already committed too much to reverse course. Resources are locked in place. Movements are interdependent. Halting one element would disrupt others. The order persists, not because it is effective, but because it is authoritative. The failure is no longer theoretical. It is now unfolding in real time, inside a structure that was never designed to stop itself. The collapse does not arrive as a single moment. It unfolds as accumulation, as consequence layered upon consequence, each one traceable to the same directive, each one reinforced by the same compliance that initiated the process. The system continues to operate, but its outputs no longer resemble its intentions. Scale becomes apparent first, not through individual loss, but through magnitude, through the realization that multiple components are failing simultaneously, not independently. Movements intersect where they were meant to separate. Absences appear where presence was required. The order's assumptions no longer correspond to the conditions it governs. The structure responds by tightening. Procedures are reinforced. Timelines are reasserted. Communications increase in volume but not in depth. The language remains formal, restrained, exact. There is no vocabulary for collapse, only for execution. Resources are expended to correct outcomes that the order itself continues to produce. Each corrective action is authorized by secondary instructions that exist solely to preserve the original directive. The system is now working to sustain the order rather than the objective it once represented. Coordination breaks down unevenly. Some elements continue to function with precision, executing their tasks flawlessly in contexts where those tasks no longer produce meaningful effect. Others fail entirely, not through negligence, but through misalignment with a reality the order does not recognize. No one steps forward to interrupt the process. There is no singular point of failure to address. The responsibility is diffuse, distributed across a structure that has converted individual judgment into procedural certainty. Loss becomes measurable, not in personal terms, but in operational ones. Units cease to respond within expected parameters. Assets are rendered ineffective. Time is consumed without progress. These facts are recorded meticulously, even as they accumulate beyond correction. The system does not panic. Panic would imply awareness without control. Instead, it persists. The order remains active. Attempts to adapt occur only within the boundaries permitted by the directive. They are insufficient by definition. Each adjustment arrives too late, constrained by the same assumptions that created the failure. The collapse accelerates because it is now self-reinforcing. Actions taken to stabilize one area destabilize another. Dependencies that were invisible during planning become critical during execution. The structure is too rigid to reconfigure itself under stress. Communication channels remain open, but they carry diminishing value. Confirmations still return, but they confirm processes rather than outcome. The difference is noted nowhere. At a certain point, continuation itself becomes the primary objective, not success, not resolution, continuation. The order's authority persists, even as its purpose dissolves. It cannot be withdrawn without acknowledgement of error. And acknowledgement is not part of the system's vocabulary at this stage. What remains is consequence. The collapse completes not with noise, but with exhaustion, with systems that can no longer sustain the demands placed upon them, with structures that have followed instruction beyond the point of functionality. When motion finally slows, it does so unevenly. Some elements stop abruptly, others continue briefly, disconnected from any coordinating framework. The order has reached its logical end. It has been obeyed completely. What it has produced cannot be. Block 6. Aftermath without resolution. After the collapse, the system does not stop. It absorbs. The order is no longer transmitted. It does not need to be withdrawn. Its completion has rendered it inert. What remains is documentation. Records finalized, logs closed, reports filed in their appropriate sequences. The language remains unchanged. The tone remains procedural. There is no formal declaration that the order failed. There is no directive to name what occurred. The absence of such instruction is itself instructive. Silence fills the space where evaluation might have existed. Operations resume elsewhere. Schedules are revised without reference to what preceded them. Resources are reallocated according to standing protocols. New instructions move through the same channels, formatted in the same way, carrying the same authority. The structure does not pause to reflect. Reflection would imply deviation from function. Within the system, responsibility disperses naturally. No single point bears weight long enough to be examined. Each level can demonstrate compliance. Each action can be traced to authorization. The records confirm this thoroughly. The failure is not erased. It is archived. Data related to the event is preserved in precise detail, stripped of interpretation. Numbers remain. Timelines remain. Outcomes are recorded as facts, not conclusions. The structure prefers this form. Facts can be stored without consequence. Those who participated return to routine. Roles remain intact. Procedures are reinforced, not reconsidered. Training materials remain unchanged. The system does not interpret failure as evidence of structural weakness, only as an instance contained by documentation. The order is no longer spoken of directly. References to it become indirect, technical, reduced to identifiers and dates. Over time, even those references diminish. The system favors continuity over memory. What persists is pattern. New orders arrive with familiar phrasing. They move through the same channels, encountering the same efficiencies, the same assurances. Each one benefits from the structure's confidence in itself. The conditions that allowed the failure remain present. They are foundational. They are necessary for scale, for speed, for control. Altering them would disrupt the system's primary function, and disruption is treated as a greater risk than repetition. Somewhere within the archives, the record remains complete. It can be accessed. It can be reviewed. But review is not required for operation. The system functions without it. Time passes. The absence of accountability becomes unremarkable. It does not feel like omission. It feels like order. The structure continues to do what it was designed to do. Receive authority. Distribute instruction. Eliminate uncertainty. The order everyone followed is no longer exceptional. It is one instance among many, absorbed into the continuity of procedure. What remains is not regret, but readiness. The channels are open. The forms are prepared. Another order is already moving.